for illumined life to be birthed into form. I am the truth. I am the light. Illumined, beloved, divine.
So hello there everyone, and welcome to this video with me here today, my beautiful darlings. And we really did have some more snow, and I just want to say that today's day was really intense because for the last 2 days I was just shoveling snow, and my body really doesn't like it, and yet it's what I have to do to stay not totally isolated from this realm. At the end of today's video I also want to show you a mini clip, a mini view from my balcony. It's really beautiful. There's so much snow. I mean, I can hardly believe it's the beginning of December, and we had to clean the driveway. You know, someone had to come and I had to pick the ice. So today I had an idea that I'm going to use my ice pick, because you know I was used to go to the mountains a lot, even in wintertime. That was my favorite season of the year, actually, because it's so beautiful, pure with the snow. And those of you who've been with me that long, you probably know. So even before I started this work, I had a period where I used to mountaineer a lot. And, you know, my body doesn't have the kind of resilience that it used to have, but it's still mine. I'm still here. So today I took my ice peak, and I just basically, you know, was cutting through the ice. It was a very difficult job. Even here, you know, things are dropping from the icicles, and there's so much ice then because it's melting. And finally today we have some sun after a weekend of snow. So I just wanted to open up with that. It was really intense, but I'm really upsurged because I was getting new information. So today's video is actually an ongoing video from the ongoing topic of the dome, the grid, the net, whatever we may call it, and the work, right, that is required for this ascension, and the information that the Illumined Tantrika beings, or the Illumined Primordial Trinity of Life beings, have been sharing with me as we are part of one team. So I want to start at the beginning, right? I want to start with this net, because a lot of people don't understand when it was implemented, how it is implemented, and how it's being sustained. Well, in the previous video we talked about how it's being sustained, right? It's all frequency based, right? And it's a specific signal that is a controlled frequency, right? That it's like self-regulative, but it has to be maintained and controlled synthetically, right? It's a part of artificial intelligence. So we have this darkness inventing a way of projecting holograms and then sustaining these holograms with a specific frequency. I'm not a part of their work, so I don't have all the data, but I know the Illumined beings do, because they have been studying this a lot since forever, since eons, and especially now at this time, they're using my conduit, my conscious vessel, my vehicle, and my physical body to do the work. You have to understand that when Illumined beings come, it's not a frequent experience on the planet. They don't use any kind of technology other than the organic intelligence or technology that's inherent in the body. So they would dig up the primordial life intelligence that's basically encoded in the seed of life. We've talked about it a lot in my videos. The seed of life being written in the core of the embodiment of that particular being who is the avatar for that work, which in this case it's me. And basically they use that body to create a dynamic that basically dissolves these synthetic waves. And we've talked about these inorganic frequencies in relation to these organic intelligent frequencies that are basically directly of God, and they come through the prism of life and descend as this divine trinity consciousness that's basically the template, the purest template of primordial life that exists in this universe. So I've talked to you before about the queen, right? And them relating to me as the queen has nothing to do with the kind of word we use here in the 3D, like the queen is someone has to be worshipped and is the chosen one in relation to, you know, being there in the pedestal. That's the distorted essence of the queen that you can see very distributed around our planet. It's not just in our, you know, monarchy that's, you know, fallen, reptilian, it's also in other religious natures, right? And basically you have these ruling masculine Templars, right, who basically take over the feminine principle of life. So when they speak, when the illumined beings speak of the Trinity of life, and they use the word the Queen literally means the descent of that primordial life force intelligence. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to use my sunglasses today because as you know, in the winter time, sun is very low and it's all being reflected from the white snow. So forgive me, I'm not the kind of person that speaks through a lens, but today there's no other way. I really don't use any sort of covering, but today it's kind of like a must for me. So this distorted version of the principle of the Queen, you know, it's for people to have a wrong sort of idea of what that truly is. So when they speak of the word and they use the word the Queen, they are talking about the consciousness of divine Trinity. So the Tantrika beings, they represent the great matriarchs of this universe. And in the previous video, we've talked about how they are the most ancient, oldest, wisest beings in this universe. Of course, they are descendants from beings, we've talked about that 2 videos ago, who came and brought the seed of life into this universe, from a universe that already completed its unified polarity storyline, right? When they mention the word the Queen, it means I'm simply at the core of this work. My body is, the templating work is occurring through my body, my physical embodiment. But the Queen means that the consciousness that was never on earth before had to descend, right? God invoked the consciousness of the great Elohim beings and said, this is what it needs to be done in this particular cycle, because we have all of this havoc happening and we need to get work done. And how illumined beings function, they follow the principles, calls of service of the great divine Godhead, basically the ruling principle of our life, that is God, yes? And so this is the way they bring the templates of illumined life back in. So the only way through is in. So the only way they can actually do the work within enclosed spaces, within enclosed realms that have a dome frequency around it, which we've talked about in the previous video, is to bring themselves through the embodiment right in. So we have what we call the aspect of this protocol is called the mission agent, and I'm the mission agent in this work. So mission agents are needed to be embodied in these physical vessels because our bodies basically regulate the incoming and outgoing flow of this divine intelligence. So the signals that are coming in from the illumined light intelligence are being deciphered through my physical body, and also then the signals that need to be brought into the matrix prism, because the only way to dissolve it is from within, right? You already know this principle, I'm sure of it. Because if you ever needed to dissolve something or work with something, you can't work around it, right? You have to go in and work from the inside out. That's why the principle of the Queen is used here, because go to the analogy, the principality of nature, right? How everything functions in nature. If the queen bee or the queen in the ant kingdom, it's like everything is being brought to the Queen. And in my case, right, in no amount of intelligence that ever meant that my life is simple and people just bring me things, and that's not at all. My life is as difficult inwardly in the work I do with these frequencies, and outwardly, as you can see. We're all alone, abandoned here. All the work, physical work, I have to do alone. I basically injured both of my mini fingers, right? Tiny fingers, because of the way I'm holding the shovel, and it's like too heavy, and basically I can't do this, you know. So there's a lot of physical tolling that the body has to go through in order to do this work, and I have to keep saying to myself, you know, my body is a survivor. My body is of this intelligence, and whatever happens physically, it's really difficult, but it is the only way, you know? And so I want to talk more about the nature of this dome frequency now, okay? So first we have to get that out of the way, cleared away, because I think some people still don't understand that when I use the words the Queen, in no way that's meant in a relation of glorifying myself or even the illumined ones. They're simply beautiful, direct descendants of God's intelligence doing the work of serving the divine. And each time God calls out for something, they do that. And without a doubt, they've always been doing that. They never, you know, waver, or they don't falter. They just keep on going and following the instructions that are divine, born of divine intelligence that we know as God. So lovingly so. The Queen means that the first descent that ever happened before, if the great matriarchal essence that's primordial, that's life forming, it's life-giving, and it is life-sustaining in an organic, intelligent way. As you can see, the usage of the dome frequency disrupts that, encapsulates that in a negative way, because whenever normally, right, thinking about the just basic principles of whatever it is, if you just keep yourself locked in an enclosed bag, right, you don't get your oxygen. So imagine the planet, right? We still have biosphere, we still have atmosphere, but it's all being now maintained in a controlled fashion. So even the elements are not the same, because they don't get enough life force from God's intelligence to maintain themselves naturally. And that's what people don't understand. That life is sort of like the life force has been wavering. And if a life force of a specific realm drops to a certain degree, it's not good. And that's when the darkness comes and can hijack a vulnerable realm that's already at a degree of vulnerability that basically isn't enough. It's not sufficient for this life to grow in its intelligence. So basically it's becoming more and more closed and vulnerable and susceptible to these hijacking directives, okay? So you have to understand that everything is based on life force. We call this life force intelligence, the Illumined ones call the light quotient, right? So we need to constantly build the life quotient. So I always have been saying not to promote myself or the work I've been doing, all the teachings of life force mastery and cultivation and orgasmic life force mastery, but to actually say that that's the only way. And people who still don't understand that and are taking it for granted, you know, if you're still following the ruling principles of the New Age who say, well, we're just, everything's happening automatically because we're of God, and you just receive in a normal, non-enclosed, non-interjected space, filtrated to the very core, that would maybe be true. I mean, you'd still have to cooperate and grow because we are intelligence of God directly. So everything we do has to come from our own sovereign God principle. It's not just automatic. So if you're still following along the lines thinking it will just happen because the planet is sending you wrong, and it's not, unfortunately so. And I don't wish to tell people they're wrong. You know, there is freedom of choosing to believe whatever you believe, but it's believing in the art of deception. And that's basically how the darkness works. It keeps on deceiving so that we wouldn't see the obvious. And the Illumined ones are bringing the life simplest primordial principles that once you get them, everything functions and spreads out from that core understanding. So I have to be at the core of this work, in the middle of it all, for that work to actually take place. So I actually channeled a beautiful spirit drawing for this month for Patreon, because I do these every month, that follow the Illumined intelligence principles that the Illumined beings, a directive, you know, the trinities of life bring through Holy Spirit. And Holy Spirit is the purest essence of life. That's what it is, okay? So I brought forth this very simple drawing to understand the nature of the dome and how the intelligence of Illumined light works through it. But you have to also know, it's not like we're going to do the work and everyone's going to get a free ride. No, so this is where I want to start explaining to this topic. It will be a lot, so bear with me, okay? The first thing they want to share is for those who don't even know what that is. So around the time that we call the zero timeline, when the time started being counted differently, right, from minus to plus, after we call, before the Christ and after Christ, that's how we measure this, our timelines now. When what we call the Illumined being called Jesus the Christ came, and he brought forth a very specific configuration of light into our planetary sphere of existence, it was right about the time that the net was being actually implemented, its early stages, and being thrown. So that was the Illumined directive of Illumined beings at that point, right, is to bring through an Illumined being who also would operate within the core of the planetary realm. So we needed an embodiment, right? And people who are saying, well, he had these and these and these past lives, they don't understand, right? Illumined beings, they don't have past lives, lifetimes on Earth. Each and every Illumined being as an avatar expression and embodiment comes once, and that's it. That's how the consciousness of God works once you understand it. So around the time he came in, it wasn't as bad as it is now. You know, we're in this last stages, right, of its complete controlling implementation. So when he came in, there was the initiative of trying to prevent this, and we knew that, you know, you can't just prevent things because darkness exists, but there would be a sufficient amount of that light quotient and in configuration that he brought forth through through his embodiment, solemnly through that, and the teachings he brought forth, that would echo throughout these 2,000 years for those who were the true disciples to gather around that simplistic core knowledge and essence, and to basically have an understanding what he actually taught about, which is Illumined Ascension principles. That's basically the nature of his teachings for the closest disciples. You know, he brought forward broader teachings as well for the masses that now we still call the masses, okay? And here I need to mention something briefly, just a short detour or interjection. Those of you who still watch people or follow people who talk about the collective consciousness, or this is the collective energy reading I'm getting, or they're reading collective energy, or they're doing collective readings, it's not the path of ascension. I mean, go ahead if that's your desire, but those of you who are here for ascension, that's where I'm here for. That's my embodiment. I don't do any other work. It's not going to eventually, it will clash. It's not the same thing. So you either have a choice of pursuing the collective and going with the collective consciousness, which is like going with the wave that doesn't involve any of your sovereign individuality and evolution into your own illumined cognizance and embodiment eventually. So it's like a wave that sweeps you off the shore and you're just become a part of a wave. It has nothing to do with unity consciousness, okay? It's like the collective is not the same as unity consciousness, and a lot of people still don't know that. So I have to say it out open for those who really still maybe are at the beginning stages of that understanding, right? Because people are at different levels of awareness, and I understand that. But there's so much confusion around that, so I need to say that. So everyone who still reads the collective, they're still reading from the prism, okay? So they're still reading from the collective, where they want to navigate the collective to be. And even you have a being that says, I'm a healer, I'm this and that, you know, they might be a beautiful soul. I'm not saying they're not, but at a certain point, they're themselves being deceived and they're unaware of it. So whoever hasn't fully woken up will still be talking about the collective, you know. If you're in the path of Illumined Ascension and you want to be, you have to first drop everything we say the collective, or serving the collective consciousness, or serving the planet. And we talked about this before, right? Those of you who've been following through all of the videos of the late, especially of the late, because these were the most important teachings that came forth about this phenomenon, what's going on at this time. So I needed to bring that forward. So going back to the zero timeline, right? Our beloved Jesus the Christ, who was the Messiah or the chosen one at that particular timeline, did a lot of work. And, you know, if he did not come here, a lot of souls who are old souls going around the planet for quite a few rides would not be where they are currently. And a lot of these souls are feeling completely ready for the journey of ascension. However, this is where it gets tricky. I need to say what my team has been telling me in this last week when we went through another layer of deep distortion, you know, just reading through those frequencies and eliminating all the rubbish that's there, giving people false impressions and ideas. So as you know, it's kind of presented in a realm now. First, you know, these distortions like the whole planet is descending or everyone is ascending and all these things, beliefs that are false. It's not the truth. Okay, go and watch the previous video if you haven't, because you won't understand this one if you don't watch the previous one about the dire state of the current condition. And if you want to move out of it, like the only way out is through. We mentioned this. So in this realm, the only way to ascend is ascending through the frequency that it's a distortion. You can't go around it. It's like, no way, you're in it, right? We're all in it. And for that solemn reason, since Jesus Christ embodiment, right, he showed the principles of ascension, how to do it. He said, all I can do, you can do too. However, right, because it was an unpredictable matter and a lot of people were still very naive, also very ignorant, collective consciousness really wasn't going in an accelerated rate that, you know, maybe we'd hope for. And that's why we had more intrusions of the dark than, right, we would have wanted. But he brought forth that first piercing through that was required for the startup of this mission, and I've channeled this material already in the Cosmic Christ teachings that I received, let's say 2.5 years ago, something like that. I still haven't shared these. There was a whole transcript, this whole Illumined writing that I received about the beginning, what he started and what we're completing now at this time. It's very fantastic, phenomenal writing. You know, that was before the transgression occurred, this 2 years ago. And so I was shown literally that because of this, what took place and the net started being implemented after his ascension, we actually had zero. I know you're going to be surprised. You might have a belief, because that's one of the beliefs that are playing around, you know, beings are ascending off the planet. No, no one, you have to really accept this as a fact, because we've tested it out. We've even asked directly Jesus Christ, because he works as a master guide with my mother, who's a beautiful devotee of this path and our path. It's a one path. It's a path of illumined beings. It's just different levels to it, right? That you have to go through on your own journey of ascension. And so he confirmed, he said it's true. So no soul after his embodiment actually went into a state that's complete physical transfiguration and ascension. It's an illumined ascension. We're not talking about reaching a specific quotient of understanding, what we called enlightenment and ascension, physical transfiguration of the body and going off the planet and actually going to the higher realms, going to illumined realms. It's not the same. So we had many yogis, many teachers, gurus that have reached quite a sufficient amount of that enlightenment. And of course, there were some of the very important prominent teachers for humanity during the last, like, just, you know, approximately, say, 2,000 years. But these cycles we're in, right, that are these celestial cycles, are like about 2,600 years. So after his physical ascension and transfiguration of the body, right, so we say there's a metamorphosis that requires 3 stages. I've talked about this for years, right? First you transform, then you transfigure, and then you, no, sorry, first you transform, then you transmute, and then you transfigure. So 3 levels of ascension. And a lot of beings who've been within this enlightenment movement, they reached first or maybe second stage, but not the third, which is what is required for a complete physical ascension of the body, right? It's what masters say, taking the body with you. Literally, the body goes into the next experience, into the next realm. So unfortunately, there were 0 ascensions, handful experienced in the bodies of souls here, belonging, right, in this matrix, evolving around the planetary sphere. And people who say we go to heaven, as we've said, this is not the illumined realms or the higher planes of reality. It's not the same. Heaven is almost like a falsification of, you know, a place. There's, I think it's in the teachings of Aurea or somewhere. It's a place called Havana, I believe, and it's like it has to do with the inner planes of illumined prisms of light, like the inner suns that basically hold illumined realms together. And from these illumined planes, there's realms being created that are ascended realms for beings to experience, right, and still have amazing evolutionary experiences that through their souls grow. And because of the nature of what's been happening in this realm, right, this beings here and the realm, right, couldn't ascend. So there's this whole program going on now saying the realm, like the planet is ascending. Well, how can it, right? Just looking at it with the bare facts. So basically, literally speaking, there was 0 ascensions, physical, whole body transfigurations after Jesus's direct showcasing his demonstration. 2,000 years later, right, we have a dome, we have the net, we have this false synthetic grid frequency that's completely encapsulated the planet, and it's being sustained with all of these electromagnetic frequencies, but they're emanating a WAM frequency that actually prohibits a natural flow of life force. It basically creates an enclosed space. I don't have all the knowledge how the dark contains this, maintains this, what's their technology, but their technology is numerous, it's vast. So in the vice versa experience of illumined beings, there's 0 technology. And you might say, well, then of course, how can they be stronger? Because they're of God. There's nothing stronger than the illumined intelligence of God. So in the drawing, it's represented. I created this whole explanation of how this works, how we're creating these peaking points of openings, or basically opening the gates through which then the currents of this divine love, full mother's embrace of that primordial life-sustaining frequency can enter through, and they go right into the seed of the core, right? So we have the seed of life, and then we have the core of the prism, right, of the matrix. And they're kind of now being intermingled, they're being interwoven until this reversal is complete, right? And so the only thing they can do, they will do, they are doing, is creating like this opening. It's almost like, imagine opening a lid cover, which brings me to the next stage, right? Who gets to actually ascend, and why we had such challenges of ascension anyway? Well, I've told you why, right? Because the dome frequency and many of its numerous implementations have been growing. And because of that, the chaos and the dispersing of true, genuine teaching and information has been literally obliterated on this planet. Because if you manage to fragment everything to its pieces, right? Because the darkness cannot take something away, can eliminate the source of true illumined light, but they can disperse and they can fragment, and that's what they've been doing. Even their technology is based on fragmenting pieces, and going even as far out as fragmenting the nature of the soul. So it takes quite some work to actually gather as a wholly embodied full soul, because if your soul isn't fully moved through that soul fragmentation process back into unification, that's the Illumined Union teachings I'm presenting, what we are, then you also can't ascend, because there's like fragments of you still missing and kind of, revolving around this planetary sphere. So there's all these levels, right? So each time you kind of, let's say you would upsurge a new level of desired intention for ascension, there would be another obstacle, right, presented. And this is how this matrix is configured. It's designed to basically always prohibit and eliminate the simplicity of life force that is divine source intelligence. So now, who is the one to ascend at this time? So this is what they've told me just today. Because, sometimes even I myself wonder, how will I get through this, And we were meditating yesterday after doing the golden spiral work, because that's a must, that's a necessary preliminary work of ascension, and we brought forward these teachings. They are so simple, but they were actually never brought forward in such simplistic form. Anything that's very complex, like complicated, it again is more intended to fragment, that bring you into a state of unified polarity and unification of your own Illumined Union process. So this is what we were shown in yesterday's meditation after reaching the spiral and another level of release. I was asking also Jesus the Christ, I said, well, what if I don't make it? I said, but what if I don't do this? Because they said no one before ever has done it since the time of Jesus. And because the intensity of the grid has only been, just intensifying and amplifying instead of the works of light amplifying. And I have to tell you this, if you had a specific quotient of people waking up and starting to exude their full essence and working with the life force of God, it would dissolve almost instantaneously. And that's what people don't know, but it would. But we have far too few individuals to actually do that work. So our team is just almost like just us and a few random devotees. And here we get to the part that's very tricky. And then when I asked beloved Jesus, what if I can't make it? And Jesus was laughing and he said, well, if Aurea can't, he said, no one can. Because we are in a very, very complex time. However, the ascension work I'm doing now, moving from the, sharing so much and, with the people, what I've been trying to teach, and not being a sufficient amount of feedback in my own regard of what I've been noticing. Now they're showing me it's more like just, the last stage of ascension, which is my physical ascension. And for me, they said it's guaranteed because we're doing it as Illumined teamwork. So I don't have to worry, but I still have to do work, and the work is very intense. And that's the reason why I don't have to worry, because I work constantly and nonstop. So now, who gets to ascend? It's very tricky because people don't get something, right? Let me just use 3 examples. Non-believers, ignorant beings, and lazy souls. These beings will not ascend because they will have to go through another cycle, which will be another long cycle through which they have to once again bring back their soul into a level of wholeness, to understand even the true concept of what God is, what divine love is. Because how can you be a non-believer, a lazy one, and ignorant one if you have that love of God? You believe you do sometimes. People get it mentally, but it's not implemented within your body. It's not embodied. It can't work through you. You need a sufficient light quotient that gets you through. Again, let me use the words. It's like the only way out of this prison and into the prism of illumined life is through it. And that's what we're doing. So I was asking because they told me that no one has the intelligence to do what I do, because it's directly coming from my own illumined spirit of Aurea. And souls here that have been very ancient souls, old souls here, just like feeling they no longer associate with this realm. They've had all these feelings. These are the ones that are ready, especially if they are devotees. In every single aspect of their life, they have their full faith into God and ascension. There has to be, without a doubt, no more doubt and question. You know, my mother had these doubts, so she asked and confirmed, and I was telling her what my family of light, what the Illumined ones have been saying, because they were showing me that today in my beautiful meditation here out in the sun. They were saying that everyone who is willing to work with them, they will work with, but not those who don't, and they will not touch upon these. They will not help those, not because they're bad and, you know, they're selective, but it's because those are not ready. And they know, you know, they read the intelligence of God, and God knows who is eager and desiring and yearning to come back into the true nature of eternal life that is illumined, and consciousness that is life-giving, and no longer feeling attached to this planet. A lot of souls maybe would like to, but they feel so attached to this realm. And I already told you, this realm will get worse and worse. And if you're following up with this, yeah, but this realm is shifting from 3D to 5D, it's not how ascension is based. Okay, so it's all in the drawing I did. Those of you who ever wish to become a part of the Patreon team, the learning part, this is just the informative part through these videos when I get to inform you about the mission, about the ascension path, what's required, and then it's the working part, and that's what we do on a Patreon called Illumined Ascension. I'll also do, like I said, the second part of the spiral. I'll do that this week, and we're going to do an amazing work of, you know, beaming through, and I'm going to teach you a way of moving through the net, and a deeper explanation of it. So there's 3 levels. I already explained that. And going back to what they've shared with me, they said this to me today, that those who will want to work with them, they will, but they won't work with those who are not ready. And as I said, they hand select them. They choose them because they feel what these souls emanate, and they feel their light quotient. So in your words, you can be very spiritual and blah, blah, but it's what you emanate that they notice, and what God knows. So God, like, nothing can be hidden, right, from the great divine creator, the beautiful divine intelligence. And so they were telling me that they're going to help actually everyone who is in what they showed me, like the first circle, right? So I'm like this, the queen that has to break through the prison entirely, and it will be easier for those around. They were showing me like in concentric circles, right? And the second circle around are those who learned something from it, but it's not their time yet. And the third circle is those who are still completely oblivious, as to what's happening on this planet and in this realm, and what ascension truly is. Probably they've received too much programming, they're still too much wounded, and their soul is still too fragmented. So these first few chosen ones are not because they were good or special or chosen. It's because of the amount of light work that they've already demonstrated on this planet through their acts of devotion, of compassion, and selfless service in whatever kind of way. They didn't have to be gurus or teachers. They simply had to love the basic principle of what God is and what that ultimate love is. It's not a love that most people describe on this planet is hilarious to me. It's an attachment. And the relationship that most people say, well, that's love. Well, that's an attachment. I'm talking about true creation love, love that is so primordial, love that is so devoted to God that nothing and no human can come against it or stand in the way of it. So they also said, they used these words, and they said to me today, I was just like, I was just focused on the sun and breathing, and they literally said, without a doubt, this will be the most unprecedented event or divine dispensation, orchestration of life that this realm has ever witnessed and seen before. So, yes, these were their exact words, that this will be the most unprecedented event in the history of this realm, this planet. And the reason why it will be so unprecedented is because you have so much obstruction, so much pushing, so much opposition, and still there will be breakthrough of the light. And as I've said, you have to be a complete believer. I cannot have any piece of doubt left anymore in my life. And there were moments when, especially moving through the transgression, I can put my glasses off now, the sun went down behind the cloud, when I had these doubts, and then darkness works on overpowering these doubts, and you have to keep on returning to yourself. And your light has to be so pure that without a doubt you trust God to pull you through. And this will be those first few. They said there will be only a few ascendants and they will ascend with us, and they said we will help them. When my mother was asking directly, because she was asking me, and I said, well, go ask them yourself, because this way at least you'll believe them. You never fully believe me. And so they told her directly. They said, you know, beautiful Florentina, that's her soul name, this is your first one on our list because of the acts and everything of devotion you've done. Doesn't mean the person has to be perfect. My mother still has sometimes human flaws. She can be resistant sometimes, a little stubborn. But they said, you don't take this with you. You have to have only a sufficient amount of light quotient, devotion in the work you do. So she's doing this parallel work I've been teaching since September, every day, you know. And it's just helping her to build the kind of stamina of this pillar work that, you know, without it she probably wouldn't have. This is not just, you know, a lot of people believe they're loyal, but they're always just reading in the scriptures. I mean, imagine all the scriptures, every single, I don't know, oracle, crystal, every single thing that still acts as something that's in between you and the divine directly, like a direct intelligence coming straight from the heart and mind of God, the womb of life. Then if you eliminate that, would you still feel the same? You have to really ask yourself this question. And so it's been tricky, because a lot of people who think it just happened automatically will be, unfortunately, without this experience. They said also that a lot of souls who in the beginning were chosen, they then themselves did not choose it. So they rather, you know, chose the act of not being fully courageous, because this time, this ascension, you're going to need all the courage there is, because everyone will have to break through what we were doing, the work of breakthroughs and breaking free from. But for us, for me and my body, was the most intense, the most painful, the most arduous task ever. It will be easier for those first in line in the first circle, but they have to do the work, and it has to start somewhere. And we're now in these closure times, they're calling it, because it is approaching. And without a doubt, I know that this, for me, it's the only way forward. It's my physical ascension. And a lot of people are like, yeah, whatever, I don't believe it. And okay, go off the list, you know. I really don't care, because I know what's going to happen either way. Not when, because no one will ever tell me when and directly how, but the way through, the way forward is through the work. And for me, it's daily and nightly and 24/7. So it's just difficult, because there's still such a high degree of programming that we believe, yeah, but look at all these people, and yeah, they've ascended, and we have this almost like fake hope. The only true hope has to be turned into complete faith in God, and then doing the work of illumination, because the bodies of the humans, right, and we all have ancestry dating far back to the first human that ever stepped on this planet, have been through a lot. And this has to not just be a little remedied, but it has to be healed and brought forth into complete wholeness, so that you can start emanating a light of illumination through every single cell, your pore of your being. And what these beings, the primordial ones called the Illumined Intelligence, it's like they see it as particles of photonic light. But this light has to be pure. It carries within it the seed of light that is the primordial encoding that the first Elohim, the closest to God, have received. You know, when you say, well, Elohim beings were present, you have to also know that some of these beings chose to fall. The first step, like the first creatorship, first next of kin to God. And it's not enough for us to say, well, the Elohim, you know, but illumined ones. And again, I put it into your heart, always invoke divine intelligence from highest, most high source, Trinity, then bottom up. From bottom up, bottom down. Pull forth. And, you know, the teachings have been coming forth since the primordial teachings have always been consisting of step-per-step guidance. So of course the first step was awakening to what's truth and knowing that the work has to begin physically, which begins, all the work begins with creating your own conscious pillar of light, or lumen pillar of light, because no amount of divine intelligence or the spiral work or whatever will come forth if your pillar is not activated, it's not created within your body. A lot of people haven't even done that. So how can you ascend into luminous intelligence if you haven't even built your infrastructure, right? You need infrastructure, and that is organic infrastructure that we do within our body. So I'm not going to go much deeper because the sun is just about to go down and I don't want to freeze or get a cold. My body's very exhausted from all the work. So I also want to say, just last, that all these physical things, like these intrusions, even just, for me, the snow shoveling, it tires the body. It takes life force from the body. People would say, well, it's a good exercise. No, it's not. Because for me, it brings lots of heavy weight that the body's not meant to experience, right? The ascension is meant for the body to feel lighter and lighter and lighter. Hence, you see what's happening in our world is not the case. So all these obstructions, as they were showing me, are the reasons why this is kind of being prolonged. It doesn't mean that you have to have a completely healthy and completely, body has no injuries, that was never ever injured for you to ascend. No. It just means that when you're cultivating life force through your body, then you also, during your day-to-day routines and the things that come up in our life, we splurge a lot of that life force and we give it away unconsciously. Like for me, I have to do this work here because no one else will do it. I know a person, but they were unable to come and help me because they damaged their finger at the work. So I had to do it alone. And it's not easy because everything that takes away the life force that we manage to cultivate and then regulate and maintain within our bodies can then take it away. And this path of ascension is no longer about staying fit and having the perfect body or, using the life force on things that are very trivial. We all need sometimes, right, some downtime, and our inner child needs time to play, or sometimes you just want to curl up, especially now in wintertime, right? Watch the movie or a good TV show, whatever. But it's about that balance. It's a lot of things that people don't, they don't know, they're not aware of how much they take our life force. Even sexuality. Because, sexuality can be used in a lumen way to cultivate the orgasmic life force tantrically within ourselves first. That's what sexuality is. And any sort of partnership is just meant to elevate that even further. But most of the sexuality on our planet is just taking away life force. And people who are very much prone and they desire ascension, but they would splurge and they still very kind of addicted or attached to relationships. And even sexuality, because that gives them some sort of temporary joy. In my experience, there's no other joy than that which is joy everlasting and life everlasting. So we are in our world where we still get pulled and tricked and, given all these offerings and things. We all have our vices. I have it too. But at least I'm aware of it and I'm working on it, to not be, needing specific things that I don't really need, for example. Because, when we have a lot of objects and things to sustain, sometimes our human self is being more bound to the earth plane. So it's not always easy for us. But one more last thing I wish to say is just simplify everything and know that everything starts with pure-hearted prayer to the divine. I will also, in the dome work and the shielding work, I'll share a prayer that I channel for lumen light work. And that's it. The sun is going down behind our mountains. I will show you a mini clip if I successfully recorded it, I hope. Keep my fingers crossed. Thank you for being here with me, with us, paying attention. Hopefully, taking the next few steps. I just did a video of the next Illumined Union reading, and Spirit was really, really vehement in talking about taking the next step, taking the plunge, deepening the mystical path, deepening the true understanding of how the Christ intelligence works now. Because the Christ consciousness, when it becomes a realm, it's supposed to be a field that's naturally, organically sustained through life force intelligence of God. But in our realm, this is unfortunately not so. So we have to become independently learning how to sustain our bodies to maintain the light intelligence of God within our bodies. And in most cases, people don't do that. So they're being hooked and energized through things that are not inherently of God. So anyway, my work is always there available. This week, the content is coming out. This will be the most advanced content probably I've ever shared, the most important step. But if you're new and if you want to join Patreon, or maybe some people are afraid, all you can do is just start at the beginning and go back. Because like I said, it all begins with creating the pillar, conscious pillar, for the templating work to even begin. You have to understand some preliminary concepts of lumen work and intelligence, then the next steps, right? And there were years when I talked about the pulsar. I've explained all these things more deeply there, so it's been over 2 years now that this work has been taking place, and it's been probably growing and sustaining those who wish to move forward, and it's there. But my family of light also said that those who will miss the chance, that chance will not come again anytime soon, because illumined beings with these direct embodiments and moving through into the sphere of life, it only occurs in specific outbreaths of the divine. And then again, there's like a whole outplay that needs to occur for the next step to, like the work that beloved Master Jesus did had to reach a certain stage for the new advancement of Illumined Light Team and the new embodiment of the one who was the chosen one for this work, the selected work we do. And it's like it happens only in cycles. So I really feel myself personally that there will be a lot of those souls who had a beautiful opportunity and chance, but then they would miss it. And it's going to be very unfortunate. So those of you who are still here watching the videos, at least consider taking the next step, if ascension is your desire. If not, sometimes I would say, why are people even watching my videos? Maybe they're the observant type, and maybe they're the second concentric circle, those who will learn and observe, but it's not their time yet. And those of you who feel it's your time and you worry a lot, and how and when and how will I pull through? I don't have the knowledge, as Polona Aurea does. Well, I'm here to share this knowledge. So instead of yammering about it, go take the knowledge, take it in. It's a minimum energy exchange just to sustain me in my physicality, so I can be here continuously watching into the sun and sitting here talking to you. I will now probably close this YouTube video work for a while, because my physicality is very drained at this time. I have to complete Patreon work for this month, and then the holiday time will begin anyway. So again, I would like to encourage those of you who would like to understand and reciprocate with conscious energy exchange. The donate button is always there, but I mostly appreciate people taking the next step and doing the work and joining my Patreon team and starting with the next step. So anyway, beloved ones, my darlings, thank you for being here today. I always do these videos just somehow when the sun goes down. I mean, it's very beautiful. We have very short day span now at this time, so it is what it is. But it was very enjoyable to be out in the sun after so much work, physical and non-physical. So, as always, I will greet you from the core of my heart with love, wisdom, and power, and I'll see you when the next wave comes. Bye for now.
Come into my world, the world of the elven song, magical.